I want to start this by saying something that might surprise you. I am not a tech person. I don't code. I don't use the terminal for fun. I've never compiled a kernel. I don't know what half the acronyms mean, and until recently, I thought Linux was something only hackers in hoodies or ultra-nerdy programmers used in dark rooms full of glowing monitors. For years, I used my computer the same way most people do. I turned it on, clicked a browser, opened a few apps, saved some files, watched videos, maybe did a bit of light editing, and that was it. My relationship with my operating system was simple. It existed. I tolerated it. Sometimes it annoyed me, but I never questioned it. Then something changed. Over time, my computer started feeling slower. Updates seemed to come at the worst possible times. I'd sit down to do something quick, and instead I'd be staring at a spinning circle and a message telling me not to turn off my PC. My fans were constantly running. Random background processes were eating up memory. And I started hearing more and more people casually mention Linux as a real alternative. Not as a joke. Not as a niche experiment, but as something normal people were using every day. At first, I ignored it. In my mind, Linux meant complicated commands, broken apps, and hours of frustration. I pictured black screens full of green text and endless troubleshooting forums. I told myself, that's not for me, I have zero tech skills. But the idea kept coming back. What if it wasn't as hard as I thought? What if I was making assumptions based on outdated stereotypes? One evening, after yet another forced update interrupted my work, I decided to at least look into it. I didn't plan to switch, I just wanted to see what all the noise was about. I watched a few videos from regular people, not developers, not engineers, just everyday users explaining their experience. What shocked me was how many of them said the same thing. It's actually easier than I expected. That sentence stuck with me. Easier than I expected. Could that really be true for someone like me? The next step was research. I discovered that Linux isn't just one thing. It comes in different versions called distributions. That alone intimidated me at first. I thought, great, now I have to choose from 100 confusing options. But as I dug deeper, I realized that for beginners, there are a few popular choices that are specifically designed to be simple and user-friendly. They looked clean, modern, familiar, not like the hacker stereotype at all. I was nervous. The biggest fear wasn't installation. It was what would happen after. Would my Wi-Fi work? Would my printer work? Would I be stuck searching forums at midnight because something basic was broken? I kept imagining worst-case scenarios. Eventually, curiosity won. I backed up my important files, just in case. That step alone made me feel more confident. I wasn't risking everything, I was just experimenting. I created a bootable USB drive using a simple tool that walked me through the process step by step. To my surprise, it didn't require any technical knowledge. It was mostly clicking next and waiting. When I restarted my computer and booted from the USB, I expected chaos. Instead, I was greeted with a clean desktop. It loaded faster than I had ever seen my computer load before. My Wi-Fi connected automatically, the touchpad worked, the sound worked. Even the screen brightness controls worked. I just sat there for a moment thinking, wait, that's it. I didn't even install it right away. I used the live environment for a while. I opened the browser. I played a video. I explored the settings. Everything felt normal. That was the biggest surprise. It didn't feel like I had entered some alien tech world. It felt like using a computer. Just a computer. After about an hour of testing, I decided to install it properly. The installer asked me simple questions. Language, time zone, keyboard layout. It even offered to automatically partition the drive. I didn't have to manually configure anything. I clicked the button, confirmed my password, and waited. The installation finished faster than I expected. When the system restarted, I officially had Linux running on my machine. And here's the honest truth. I was waiting for something to go wrong. But nothing did. The first few days were all about exploration. I opened the Software Center and was amazed at how easy it was to install applications. I didn't need to search random websites, worry about sketchy downloads, or click through pop-up installers. I just typed the name of what I wanted, clicked install, and it was done. Updates were handled in one place. No separate updaters for every single program. One of my biggest fears was software compatibility. I rely heavily on a browser, Office tools, and a few creative applications. The browser experience was identical. Office tasks were smooth. I discovered that there are excellent free alternatives for most common tasks. In some cases, they were lighter and faster than what I had used before. Gaming was another concern. I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I do play occasionally. I had always heard that gaming on Linux was impossible or extremely complicated. That turned out to be outdated information. Many games worked right out of the box. Others required enabling a compatibility layer with a simple toggle. I didn't have to write scripts or memorize commands. It was surprisingly straightforward. But what truly changed my perception wasn't just that things worked, it was how the system felt. It felt responsive. Even on older hardware, everything was smooth. Applications opened quickly. The system booted in seconds. I wasn't constantly battling background processes. My laptop ran cooler. The fan noise decreased. Battery life improved. There was also something psychologically refreshing about it. I felt more in control. There were no surprise restarts. No forced updates in the middle of my work. Updates were available when I chose to install them. That sense of control made using my computer less stressful. Now, I won't pretend everything was perfect. There were small moments of confusion. For example, I once downloaded a file and wasn't sure where it went. I had to learn how the file system was organized. I had to understand that installing software doesn't always work the same way as on other systems. But these were minor adjustments, not roadblocks. When I did run into questions, I discovered something else. The community. Forums, tutorials, and videos were everywhere, and many of them were written for beginners. I wasn't mocked for asking simple questions. In fact, I often found that someone else had already asked the exact same thing years ago, and the answer was clearly explained. One of the biggest myths I believed was that you must use the terminal for everything. The reality? I barely touched it in the beginning. Almost everything I needed could be done through graphical menus. The terminal is powerful, yes, but it's optional for basic use. Over time, I actually became curious about it. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to understand more. Another unexpected benefit was the customization. I could tweak the appearance without installing heavy third-party tools. Changing themes, icons, layouts, it was all built in. I didn't need to hack the system. I just opened settings and experimented. For someone with zero tech skills, that level of flexibility felt empowering rather than overwhelming. Security was something I didn't think much about before. But as I learned more, I realized that Linux's permission system and software distribution model add layers of protection by default. I wasn't constantly worried about antivirus pop-ups or suspicious background activity. That peace of mind mattered more than I expected. Perhaps the biggest shift was internal. Before switching, I saw myself as someone who isn't good with computers. But navigating this new environment showed me that many of my fears were psychological. I had assumed it would be too complex, too technical, too risky. In reality, modern Linux distributions are designed with regular users in mind. After a few weeks, something funny happened. I stopped thinking about the operating system altogether. I just used my computer. That's when I knew the switch had worked. The best technology disappears into the background. It supports you without demanding constant attention. Friends and family were skeptical when I told them I switched. They asked if it was complicated, if I broke anything, if I planned to switch back. My answer surprised even me. No, it wasn't complicated. No, I didn't break anything. And no, I don't plan to switch back. If you're someone who believes you have zero tech skills, I understand the hesitation. I was there. The idea of changing your operating system feels dramatic. It sounds like something only experts do, but the reality is far less intimidating. With clear instructions and a bit of patience, it's a manageable process. The key is mindset. Don't approach it as a permanent leap into the unknown. Approach it as an experiment. Back up your files. Test it from a USB. Explore without pressure. You might be surprised at how familiar it feels. Looking back, I realized that the hardest part wasn't installation. It wasn't configuration. It wasn't compatibility. The hardest part was overcoming the belief that I wasn't capable of doing it. Once that mental barrier fell, everything else was surprisingly smooth. Switching to Linux didn't turn me into a programmer. It didn't magically give me advanced technical knowledge. But it did change how I see my relationship with technology. I'm no longer just a passive user waiting for updates and accepting whatever defaults are imposed on me. I feel like I have a choice. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway. You don't need to be an expert to try something new. You don't need to memorize commands or understand the inner workings of your operating system. You just need curiosity and a willingness to follow simple steps. If you're frustrated with your current setup, if your computer feels slower than it should, if you're tired of feeling out of control, consider giving Linux a chance. Not because it's trendy, not because it's rebellious, but because it might genuinely be easier than you expect. For me, what started as a nervous experiment became a comfortable daily experience. I wake up, open my laptop, and it simply works. No drama, no surprises, no stress. And coming from someone who once believed Linux was only for hardcore tech experts, that still feels a little unbelievable. So if I, with zero tech skills and plenty of doubts, can make the switch and feel at home, there's a good chance you can too. Sometimes the scariest changes turn out to be the simplest. And sometimes the barrier isn't technical at all. It's just the story we've been telling ourselves about what we can and can't do.